What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be practicing using the inverse trig function. Remember that we're going to focus on the inverse sine and inverse cosine. And just so you know, you can either call it arcsine or arccosine. And you're dealing with this only portion of the graph. We discussed in the last lesson that we had to restrict the domain. And for sine, it's going to be between negative pi over 2 and pi over 2, or negative 90 to 90. Radians is going to be, in radians, the range is going to be for cosine, inverse cosine, is from 0 to pi, or 0 to 180. So with this in mind, we're going to go ahead and figure out number 1. 1a, we're going to go ahead and do these examples together. And so you need to go to desmos.com. You can go ahead and go to this function here, function miscellaneous, and you're going to write cosine, inverse cosine of 0. Make sure that you're in degrees, and you see it's 90. So we're going to convert the 90 degrees to radians, which is pi over 180, which is pi over 2. The next one we're going to do is inverse sine of 0. So we're going to go inverse sine of 0. So you're given the ratio, and what's going to come out is a degree. So you're going to go ahead and press, it's 0. So it's going to be 0. As I discussed, inverse sine and arcsine are kind of the same. And what I like about Desmos is you can type in arcsine, which means the same thing as your inverse, and you have 1 divided by SQRT of 2, and that gives you 45. So that's 45 degrees. Remember that you want it in radians, so it's pi over 180. And if you want to use this here to convert it into your fraction, you have 45 over 180, and that gives you a quarter. It gives you a quarter. We didn't spend too much time on arctangent, but you can always go arctangent of 1. And you notice it's 45 degrees, so you're going to write 45 over 180 times pi, which gives you 1/4. Pi over 4. I forgot to do pi over 4. So we're going to go ahead and find the inverse cosine of 1/2. And what you have is 60. So you're going to go ahead and write down 60 degrees over 180 degrees times pi, so that's pi over 3. The next one is inverse tangent. So we're going to go to inverse tangent. You're going to type in negative square root of 3, and that gives you negative 60, which is going to give you negative pi over 3. So now for the next we have arc. We have arcsine, and we have negative square root of 3 divided by 2, and that gives us negative 60. So negative 60 degrees divided by 180 degrees times pi gives you negative pi over 3. H, we're going to go ahead and do H now. And what you're going to type in is arc cosine negative square root of 3 then divided by 2. So that gives you 150. So to convert this into radians, it's going to be the zeros cancel. So you're left with 150 divided by 180. You can go ahead and write this as a fraction. It's going to be 5 over 6. So it's going to be 5 pi over 6. You don't have to do I and J. And just like your examples, what you're going to do is you're going to graph. I'm sorry, you're not going to graph. You're going to find the degree or the radians based on the ratio. So right here we have the ratio. So we're going to go ahead and write down arcsine, and you're going to write negative, and we have square root of 2 divided by 2, and that's going to give us negative 45. And we divide this by 180. And so you know it's going to be negative pi over 4. Okay? Number 2, we're going to do arcsine of negative 1, which we get negative 90. And what I'm doing, I'm converting it into radians. So you have negative pi over 2. We're going to find the arccosine. We have arccosine of 1. That gives you 0 degrees or 0 radians. The next one is arctangent, which is the inverse tangent. So you have arctangent of negative square root of 3. That gives you negative 60. So it's negative 60 times pi over 180, which is negative pi over 3. For number 5, you're going to find the arctangent of negative 1, which comes out to negative 45. So it's equal to negative 45 over 180. And you have times pi. So that's going to give you negative pi over 4. Number 6, we're going to go ahead and go to functions, inverse cosine, and we're going to go ahead and type in negative square root of 2 divided by 2, and that gives you 135. So it's 135 degrees over 180 times pi. So it's 135 divided by 180. That gives you 3/4 pi. And that's in radians. For number 7, we have the inverse sine, and we're given again the ratio, square root of 2 divided by 2, and we get 45. So it's 45 over 180, which is equal to pi over 4. For number 8, we have the arctangent. So you have arctangent, and it's square root of 3, which gives you 60. 60 pi over 180, which gives you pi over 3. What you're going to do next is you're going to type in, for number 9, you're going to type in arctangent, and we have the square root of 3 divided by 3, which gives you 30. So you have 30 times pi over 180, which gives you pi over 6. Number 10, you're going to go to functions, inverse sine, and it's a negative square root of 3 divided by 2, and that gives you negative 60, and which is negative pi over 3. And then you can end on number 11. So it's going to be inverse tangent, negative square root of 3 divided by 3, which gives you negative 30 over 180 times pi, which is going to be negative pi over 6. I'm going to go ahead and explain how to graph inverse sine using the Desmos calculator. What you need to do is go to your wrench, make sure that you're in degrees. I know it's in radians here, but this is going to make your life easier. We know that it's going to be, the domain is from -1 to 1, so I went ahead and added 0.5 on either side so I can have that extra space there. The y-axis, what I'd like for you to do is go from, for this case, let's go to 360. That's 2 pi, and negative 360, which is also negative 2 pi. And so it's in degrees. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and graph y equals inverse sine of x, and you notice there's a graph, but they want us to graph 2. So what you're going to do is you're going to put a 2 here, and you notice it was kind of stretched. That's a vertical stretch. So then I'm going to use a table, and you notice that at -1 it's negative 180. So that kind of helps us to just get a general picture of the graph. So we know that every 2 spaces it's pi. So we go down, this is negative pi, this is negative 2 pi. And so at -1, it's negative 180. Or let me use a different color. It's negative 180. We know that at 0, it's 0. And then we also know at 1, it's 180. And so here's your graph. And that's it. Okay. So for number 2, I used the same parent function, inverse cosine of x. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and you notice that we have it undefined. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to change my x value, the interval. So I'll say -5, and I'll put 5 over here on this side, just so I can see a picture of it. And you notice there is the picture. It's shifted, +3, it's shifted to the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a table. I already have a table. So -2 at 0. So at -2 it's 0. And then at -4, so let me see, -3. Oh, at -3 it's 90. So it's -1, -2, -3 is 90. So this is 90 right here. So at -4 is at 180. -4 is at 180. So you see the picture. So it's going to look just like this. Okay. And so we notice that that +3 is going to shift the inverse cosine function to the left. So once again, I want you to go ahead and do number 4, and you notice we have a negative pi here. So that means there's going to be a vertical change on the y-axis. So what I'm going to do is at this point, I'm going to subtract 180. So you notice that my graph goes down. It does shift. So at this point, it's -270. -0.5 is 210. And 0 at -180. And then 0.5 at -150. And at 1, -90. So I know 1's going to be -90. And once again, this will be pi, negative pi. This is -2 pi. So I know that at 1, it's -90. I know at 0, is negative 180. And I have to go down to negative 270. So 1 is at negative 90, which is right here. 0 is at negative 180. And then at 270, it's negative 1, so it's right here. So this is my graph. Okay. I would like for you to do number 5 on your own. And also number 7 on your own. And come up with the degrees, okay?